Hello, I'm Will Morley, pastor of First Baptist Church of Sparks, Nevada, with another word from Will, little instances in the life of a Baptist preacher. We have 400 to 500 members at First Baptist Church. 200 to 300 I would consider active in the church. So with that many people interacting with each other, how does a pastor deal with problems between members of the church and members of the church and people in the community? So how do I deal with a member who is spreading gossip about another member, lying about another member, or has borrowed money from another member and won't pay it back? The problems between church members can and does run the gauntlet, from petty to very serious. In Matthew chapter 18, verses 15 through 17, Jesus laid out plans on what we are to do as Christians in the church in dealing with someone who has wronged another member. But this is also a great way to deal with people outside of the church who have sinned against you or another person. So here's the first step in dealing with a sinning brother. Step 1, verse 15. Moreover, if your brother sins against you, if he has wronged you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone, that is, privately. And if he hears you, listens to you, you have gained or won back your brother. So first you go to the person privately, alone, and tell him his fault or his wrongdoing. If he says, I'm sorry, forgive me, or makes restitution, then you have been reconciled with that person. You both forget it and move on. But what happens if he tells you to hit the road or get out of my face? Then you leave and get one or two other people to go with you and you confront him again. Step 2, verse 16. But if he will not hear, does not listen, take with you one or two more, that by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses every word may be established or confirmed. So you, with another witness, go and tell him his fault. That is, what he has done wrong. If he says, okay, I'm sorry, please forgive me, or makes restitution, it's over with, finished. But if he says to you and the witness, I'm not apologizing, get out of here, then you implement verse 17, step 3. Verse 17 says, and if he refuses to hear them, that is, pays no attention, tell it to the church. So you go back to the church, and if the church says, yes, we agree that with you, this brother is wrong and he needs to make it right. But what happens if he refuses to listen to the church's decision? Verse 17b. But if he refuses to even hear or listen to the church, let him be to you like a heathen and a tax collector. That is, you do not have anything to do with him. A heathen and a tax collector would be a Christ rejecter and a wicked person. A tax collector would be a cheat, a thief, be greedy. And you wouldn't have fellowship with those kinds of people. Remember, too, the discipline meted out by the church hopefully will cause him to want to come back into the church's good graces. Whenever he says, I did wrong, I apologize, I'm sorry, or I'll make restitution, when he does that, then you have gained a fellow Christian brother, and he's back in fellowship with you and with the church. Remember, too, all 3 of these steps have one desire, and that is to reclaim the wayward Christian. Never punishment. It is done out of love, not anger. In my 40 years of pastoring, most of these problems are resolved at step 1. And if they are not resolved at step 1, most of the time we never see that person again. One Baptist pastor in Reno told a man who had a problem at First Baptist Church that wanted to join his church. The pastor said, go and make it right with Pastor Morley, then you can join this church. I admire that pastor. What he told that man to do was biblical and a continuation of Matthew chapter 18. Now let me give you 2 graphic examples of how this verse works. Many years ago, a postmaster in Sparks came into my office and he was irate. He said a member of our church was having an affair with his wife, and there were 3 children involved, and he wanted it stopped. I assured him we would take care of it ASAP. I called one of our deacons and asked him to take care of it. He said he would. He met with the man, and that was it. The church member was not a leader or involved in any program at our church. He expressed his sorrow and regret, and it was over. No one had any knowledge of it. It was dealt the way Jesus asked us to handle it, quietly, privately, and in love. Now let me give you another example. When we were pastoring in Saratoga, Wyoming, we were adding 5 classrooms, doubling the size of the sanctuary, and putting a half basement under the church. 2 of our members were businessmen in our town. One of the men made a deal with another man outside of the church that if he would dig the basement, then this member would build 2 ponds for him on his ranch. The gentleman dug our basement, but the church member did not keep fully his part of the bargain to build the ponds. So the other businessman in the church came to me, and we discussed it. We decided that if the man did not build the ponds, then we would have to pay someone to build them. This member went and confronted the other church member. Neither man wanted it to go any further, so the ponds were built to the man's expectations, and all was well. Both men went on to love each other and serve the Lord together. In church, there can be myriads of personal problems between members. One of the things we all have to remember is 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 8, which says, "Above all things, have fervent love for one another, for love will cover a multitude of sins." Love overlooks a lot of shortcomings. All of us have faults. None of us are perfect. And if love doesn't prevail, then the church becomes filled with dissension, disunity, and becomes dysfunctional. If you are a member of a fervent, loving church, that tells me you are associated with a church full of people that exemplify 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 8. And that is, it's filled with people that will overlook the faults of others. But with the more serious ones, the ones you cannot and must not overlook, these 3 verses are to me the best way of dealing with a contrary church member by using this wonderful formula given to us by the Lord. Let me read to you these verses again. Matthew chapter 18, verses 15 through 17. "Moreover, if your brother sins against you, if he has wronged you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. If he hears you, you have gained your brother. But if he will not hear, take with you 1 or 2 more, that by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses every word may be established or confirmed. And if he refuses to hear them, tell it to the church. But if he refuses even to hear the church, let him be to you like a heathen and a tax collector." That is, you would not have fellowship with him. And just a side note, this is one of the reasons churches and pastors have what is called a church administrator. They are the ones that deal with 90% of all the problems that enter the life of a church. And this frees the pastor up so he can do other necessary things, and of course, golf a little more. So there you have it, a biblical way of dealing with problems in the church and outside of the church. May the Lord bless you. I hope to see you next time with a word from Will.